So, to mil-spec or to not mil-spec? That's the question. Crucible Arms here, thanks for joining us again. Today we're going to talk about mil-spec AR-15s versus non-mil-spec AR-15s, which is virtually every AR-15 that's out there. With very few exceptions, most of them are making exceptions to different military specifications in order to bring costs down or to actually even improve the platform itself. So today that's what we're going to talk about. To mil-spec or to not mil-spec, that is the question. Most of you know that there's a lot of information out there regarding mil specifications when it comes to AR-15s. The fact of the matter is there's really only two companies in the world that are manufacturing AR-15s, or I really should say M4s and M16s, to military specifications, and that is both Colt and FN. They are supplying our armed services with, again, M4s and M16s that are quote-unquote built to mil-spec. Now, the closest that you can get to that, if you're a civilian, is to buy a Colt, either an SP6920 or an LE6920. They're both identical rifles, just different roll stamps. This one is an SP6920. It does have Magpul furniture on it as opposed to just standard furniture, but it is the closest thing that you're going to get to mil-spec. Now, you've got a shorter, or a longer barrel, I should say. You've got a 16-inch barrel on an AR-15. The 14.5-inch is what the M4 comes with for the military. It also is obviously not a select fire rifle. It is a semi-automatic rifle. So the lower, the trigger group, all of that is diverging from quote-unquote mil-spec. So if you want the closest that you can get and you want to jump to the end of the video, the Colt 6920 is going to be the closest thing a civilian can get to a mil-spec rifle without having to do a lot of research. So if that's what you want to do, run out, spend about $1,000 and you've got what you need. But we need to talk about what's not mil-spec and what matters and what doesn't matter. Personally, I think mil-spec gets overhyped or overdone. There's nothing wrong with it. Don't get me wrong. I love the 6920. But there are a lot of options out there when it comes to material grades and types of manufacturing processes that quote-unquote aren't mil-spec, but they're going to serve you just fine for the purposes that you're going to use the rifle for. Let's face it, very few of us are actually going to be in the shit hits the fan situation or be going to war with these weapons. Most of us are going to be target shooting. Most of us are going to be doing tactical training. Most of us are going to be plinking with these. And yes, they could be used for self-defense, but very few of them are going to see the harsh environments that you see in Afghanistan or Iraq or in third world countries, or the types of conditions that the military puts their rifles through. Nothing wrong with getting something that'll withstand that, knock yourself out, but is it necessary? I'm going to say no. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about mil-spec, what it does mean, and what's not mil-spec. This right here is a Bushmaster XM15. I've been shooting this for years. Done it with tactical training, knock it around. It's been in the dirt. It has served me perfectly well. I'm not going to get overly technical on what mil-spec is and isn't. We're going to go through the major features of a mil-spec rifle versus a non-mil-spec rifle and let you draw your own conclusions. But what I'm here to tell you is you're going to do just fine with a rifle such as this. If you want to spend the money on a Noveske, get even higher quality, spend $2,000, $2,500 on a rifle, please go ahead and do that. I have no issues with that. Lord knows I have overspent or spent a lot more money than other people would on particular firearms. I think you should get what you want, so be happy. Don't let people talk you in or out of things. But on the other hand, somebody who wants to buy an $800 AR to get into the game, having a bunch of people telling them, oh, it's not going to work or it's not going to hold up for you, I think that's a lot of bunk, because there are plenty of rifles out there in the $800 price range right now that are going to work just fine for you. So we're going to spend a little time today. I'm going to try and make this a concise video, not overly long, not overly technical. There's plenty of information out there if you want to go get it. But we're going to talk about the major differences between a Colt 6920 quote-unquote mil-spec rifle, a Bushmaster XM15, which is going to be common with a lot of rifles that you can purchase out there. We'll also talk about my AAC 300 blackout build that I did. Obviously it's chambered in 300 blackout, but it's still an AR-15, and a lot of the same applications fit that as they do these other two rifles. So come along, we'll go on a quick trip here and we'll kind of start from the back end of the rifle, work our way forward, and give you the differences between mil-spec, non-mil-spec, and whether or not it should matter to you. So as I said, starting at the back end of the rifle, let's talk about buffer tubes. This here is a commercial buffer tube on the back of this Bushmaster. All that really means is it's slightly larger than the Mil-Spec buffer tube on the Colt. Other than that, they're primarily the same. I believe they are both welded. Both of them, operate identically, but you do have to have different furniture put on them, obviously, because there is a different diameter. But they behave the same. Personally, I don't see a lot of difference between the two. Obviously, the diameter is the biggest difference, but some are welded, some aren't. But in terms of robustness, I've done a lot of tactical training, both with the Colt as well as with the Bushmaster. And I can tell you, we will induce failures, we'll induce double feeds, we'll induce jams, and that will require what's called mortaring the rifle in order to be able to clear the jam. So basically you're taking the buttstock and you're slamming it into the ground while you're pulling on the charging handle at the same time to clear it. I've done that a number of times with the Bushmaster. It had zero issues, no cracks, no failures. It's held up perfectly fine. Just as well, I've done the same thing with the Colt. No issues there either. So I don't see any big difference between a Mil-Spec versus a commercial buffer tube. Moving on to the lowers and the components on the lowers, is most lowers that you're going to buy nowadays are going to be a forged aluminum lower. There were some cast ones back in the 90s. There might be some people still out there doing cast, but primarily your choices now are going to be forged or billet. Billet is really nice. It's also very expensive. It's very robust. Again, if you want to spend the money, go ahead and get a billet receiver. It's not Mil-Spec. Obviously, forged is Mil-Spec. That's what comes on the 6920. That's what comes on the M4, are forged lowers. And they're generally more affordable than a billet lower. And they work just fine. As far from my money, I don't see any big difference. But again, that doesn't mean I won't buy a billet someday just because I do want, the coolest and neatest thing out there. They're mostly going to be hard anodized coated. You can get them Cerakoted, things along those lines. But basically, lowers are lowers. Different people will put different mag well reliefs in them, things along those lines. But if you want a Mil-Spec, go with the Colt. There you go. Moving on to the trigger group, as we said before, there is no such thing as a Mil-Spec trigger group in an AR-15. M4s and M16s are select fires. They have the ability to be semi-automatic or fully automatic. Obviously, in the civilian models, AR-15s, select fire is not an option. It's only going to be a semi-automatic. So, by definition, there is no such thing as a Mil-Spec trigger group in an AR-15. Having said that, you will get the traditional military type pull, military trigger with most lower kits, but you can certainly upgrade everything from just upgrading the springs themselves to going with either Geissele or with Timney trigger packs. I like both of them. I've got a Geissele in my Colt and I've got a Timney in my Bushmaster, and I swap them around for different, just to play with different triggers and different types of packages. So again, triggers are not a Mil-Spec item when it comes to an AR-15. As I mentioned before on these lowers, I have Magpul furniture on both of these. This is Colt's Magpul furniture. I mean, it came from Colt this way. It's an option that they have, and you can add it to any rifle that you want. But so it's got a Magpul buttstock, it's got a Magpul grip, and it also has a Magpul trigger guard added to it. So again, none of that is quote-unquote Mil-Spec. Moving on to the uppers. Again, you're going to be looking for forged aluminum uppers. I don't know anybody that's doing cast uppers. They're largely going to be the same except for features. Some are going to have dust cutters, others aren't. Some are going to have forward assists, others aren't. Some are going to have deflectors, others aren't. So that's, a cost consideration that you can take into account when you're looking at buying an upper or looking at buying a rifle. You start removing some of those things, obviously it becomes cheaper. But the Mil-Spec version, if you will, does come with a forward assist, does come with a brass deflector, and does come with a dust cover. So those are some of the things you want to look for. I like having all of them in there. I think I've maybe used my forward assist once or twice in the history of running my rifles, but it does come in handy when you do need it. Other than that, a forged aluminum upper is primarily a forged aluminum upper. And again, I'm sure there's going to be other people that are going to disagree with me, but that's pretty much how I see it. Now we're going to move on to the bolt carrier groups, and there is where I will say there's a significant difference in the quality of types of bolt carrier groups that you're going to be able to purchase, and it's one of the key things that you're going to want to look at when you decide what kind of rifle you want to buy. It's also going to be one of the cost considerations. It does cost money for a good quality bolt carrier group, and we'll go into the details of why. Bolt carrier groups come in all different types and qualities, and this is something where you're going to, in my opinion, you're going to want to spend some time and money. Make sure that your AR-15 either comes with or that you supply it with a good quality bolt carrier group. There is a lot of differentiation between types here, so this is something I think is important to pay attention to. I have a Colt, again, military spec bolt carrier group here. I also have a AAC nickel boron plated bolt carrier group here. I have a Bushmaster AR15 type as opposed to an M16 type, and we'll talk about that in just a second here. Bolt carrier group that originally came with the Bushmaster rifle. And then I also have a Spikes Tactical M16 style bolt carrier group as well that I've actually replaced the Bushmaster with. I'm using this instead, and I'll tell you why in just a second. The first thing you want to look for is you want to make sure that you are using what I call an M16 style bolt carrier group. And the difference between an M16 style and an AR-15 style starts right at the bottom of the bolt carrier group itself. As you can see, the bottom of it has been scalloped out on the AR-15 style, and it is a full lug, what I call a full lug, on the bottom of the M16. It adds weight, it adds some rigidity, it slows down the cycle a bit. This is an M16 bolt meant and designed for fully automatic fire. The AR-15 obviously is semi-automatic. They're taking some weight out, they're speeding up the cycle a little bit. Nothing wrong with it. It works. I ran with this particular bolt for a long time, had zero issues with it. But again, if you really want to make sure that you've got a high quality bolt carrier group, that's the first thing I'd recommend you look at. And I did replace this. I did swap this out. The other thing you want to make sure that you're finding is that the firing pin itself is fully shrouded. Some of these will have, some bolt carriers will have this cut away and it will actually expose a piece of the firing pin. Again, it's a way to save some money, it's a way to save some weight, but you're exposing the firing pin unnecessarily. So again, a quality bolt carrier is going to have a fully covered firing pin mechanism in it. Most bolt carriers that you're going to get are going to be made out of Carpenter 158 steel, but some of the other things you want to make sure you look for is that the bolt itself is shot peened, that it has been magnetic particle inspected, MPI, as well as high pressure tested. However, how they're tested is very different from manufacturer to manufacturer. One of the things that happens with, for instance, with the Bushmaster is they will do what's called batch testing. So on the bolt itself, they will magnetic particle inspect and they will high pressure test, or may not high pressure test, 1 out of every 100 bolts. So they'll get a batch of them in, they'll grab one, they will test it. If it passes, they consider the batch good and they move it all through. Nothing wrong with that. A lot of things that you buy are batch tested, believe it or not. So it works just fine. Obviously, if you have a variation in your process, it will show up in batch testing. However, if you want to make sure that you are getting the very best quality and that it's very consistent, then Colt does magnetically particle inspect every single bolt. They also high pressure test every single bolt. That is Mil-Spec. So that's a good specification in my mind. It's a little peace of mind. Again, nothing wrong with batch testing, but that way you know for sure that it has been tested and that you're not going to have any metal fatigue, you're not going to have any cracking, it's going to hold up. They also need to be shot peened, and that's a way of really condensing the outside finish, giving it more strength. That's another thing that you want to look for. And again, your high-end, your Spikes Tactical, your BCMs, AAC, all of your more expensive M16 style bolt carrier groups are going to have that type of testing involved. The other thing you're going to want to look for is you're going to want to make sure that the carrier and the gas key are both chrome lined. Again, that's a military specification, and that's just for ease of cleaning, basically, is what it boils down to. So do you have to have it? No, you don't have to have it, but it does ease the cleaning. It does keep it from fouling as much. So again, a chrome lined gas key, a chrome lined carrier are absolutely mandatory as far as I'm concerned if you want a good quality bolt. You're also going to want to make sure that you are using number 8 fasteners on the gas key itself and that they are properly staked. This is one area where I do see a lot of variation between different manufacturers. Not so much in the number 8 fasteners, I think most of them are using those, but the quality of the staking can really vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. So there's no Mil-Spec certification, if you will, for that. But you just want to make sure that the metal on the gas key is impinging on the bolt itself on both sides so that it cannot move, cannot come loose. And again, any quality manufacturer, be it Spikes Tactical, BCM, AAC, they're all going to make sure that that is done very, very well. Another Mil-Spec item when it comes to bolts is they are manganese phosphate coated. So again, that's a coating that's military spec that you're going to want to make sure is on your bolt carrier group. Again, the vast majority of manufacturers do use that. There are also some other coatings that are coming out nowadays. This is my AAC. This has a nickel boron coating on it. What I like about the AAC version is the original carrier is actually milled down so that when they put this coating on it, it goes back to the original specifications in terms of diameters and tolerances. Not everybody does that. Some will just add the coating over the top of the original bolt carrier, which increases the dimensions, obviously, because it's a coating that's going on over the top as opposed to milling it down and then putting the coating to build it back up to the original specification. Nickel boron, this came with my AAC upper. It's meant to be a little slicker. It's supposed to clean up a little easier. It's great. I've had no issues with it. Do I think it's a must-have? No, I really don't. A lot of what gets done these days in terms of selling you a rifle has to do with marketing, to be quite honest with you. Manufacturers need to differentiate themselves. So specification wars become one of the big things that they do, looking for coatings, looking for the next best thing. I like it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but there's nothing wrong with a manganese phosphate coating. They've been on there since 1959 and they work just fine. But if you want to spend a little extra money, and I did, go ahead and go with the nickel boron. There are also a couple of other coatings that I'm not all that familiar with that are going on to bolt carrier groups as well. Again, if you have the money and you want to spend it. No harm done. But make sure that you do spend good money on your bolt carrier group, or that you make sure that the bolt carrier group that's coming inside of the rifle that you're buying is a high quality bolt carrier. It is one of the key aspects of making sure that you've got a rifle that's going to run for a long, long time. Moving on to the barrel. The barrel, along with the bolt carrier group, are the two critical components, in my opinion, that really need to be paid attention to when it comes to having a quality AR versus one that's maybe not so quality. You're going to be looking for, again, the military spec is a 4150 steel barrel. I'm going to read this because it also has to meet another specification, which is the 11595E. That is a specification against the 4150 steel. You can go on the interwebs, and again, you'll find all kinds of wars about, types of steels and types of linings, all those types of things. Here's what I'll tell you. Get a 4150 steel. Get it chrome lined. That's again Mil-Spec. This is chrome lined. It is MPI tested, magnetic particle inspected. It is also high pressure tested. So that is the military specification for these barrels. Generally speaking, I'm going to recommend going with a heavy profile barrel. It does add weight, but it's going to take the heat better. That doesn't mean that a pencil barrel is not going to work. It doesn't mean that, if you want to take some weight out of your rifle, that going with a thinner barrel isn't the way to go. But just know that as it heats up through repeated shooting, it's probably going to end up being a little less accurate. But how accurate do you need to be? Again, it depends on the purpose that you're buying a rifle for. There's a big difference between buying a rifle for self-defense, buying a rifle for plinking, rifle for just some great range target shooting versus, you want to do some precision long-range shooting. Then you're going to get into floating handguards, all different types of things that you're going to want to do. But again, if you're just looking for a good multi-purpose AR, I would recommend going with a heavier barrel. This is an M4 profile. Again, that's the military spec that comes on the Colt. However, this AAC barrel on this particular rifle, my 300 Blackout, it's nitrited rather than chrome lined. Now, it's marketed that way and sold that way as being more accurate than a chrome lined barrel. You will always get some variations in chrome lining that can lead to accuracy issues, supposedly. Very, very accurate rifle. Bushmaster, same thing as 4150 steel. It's the heavy barrel. Very, very accurate. No issues there. Very, very accurate 300 Blackout rifle, I will say that. But, can I tell a big difference between the nitrited barrel and the chrome lined barrel? No, I can't. Not in terms of accuracy, nor in terms of cleanup. This barrel cleans up just fine. This one also, as you notice, is a low profile gas block on it because it's got a free floating handrail that goes over the top of it, as opposed to the traditional A2 style, which again is a military specification. So you got the A2 front post, but the gas block is also incorporated into this. It is forged. It's got F on there for forged. Again, that's a Mil-Spec. You also have a bayonet lug on here. Again, Mil-Spec. I don't put bayonets on mine, but there you go. It should have one. The other thing is, standard threaded barrel. Now on this, I don't have the A2 flash hider. I have swapped out on my Colt. This is a Surefire muzzle brake as opposed to a flash hider, but the A2 birdcage flash hider that's on the Bushmaster is what comes standard, and again is a Mil-Spec piece in terms of, if that's what you want, if you're looking for Mil-Spec. The other thing you're going to want to take into consideration when it comes to barrels is the twist rate. Again, on the Colt, 1-in-7 is the military specification for the twist rate. That handles the bullet weights that the military is using. But I know on my Bushmaster here, this is a 1-in-9 twist rate. So twist rates supposedly will, and I shouldn't say supposedly, they do. They will affect the accuracy of the rifle based on the bullet weight that you're running through it. Having said that, I have been very, very accurate with both of these rifles. So the whole idea is to be able to stabilize the bullet optimally, and that's going to depend on the bullet weight. So depending on what you're running, and a lot of people are running different weight bullets all the time, 1-in-7 is the Mil-Spec, but there's plenty of 1-in-9s out there. They've been working just fine. You can get all kinds of exotic twist rates. And if you're into, competitive shooting, if you're into very tight target shooting, it's something that you may want to take into consideration. But for my money, for what I do, a 1-in-7, a 1-in-9, they both work equally well for me, and I don't see a lot of difference in terms of accuracy. It really varies more from manufacturer of different bullets and different loads than it does the actual weights themselves. So there you have it. That's Crucible Arms' take on Mil-Spec versus non-Mil-Spec when it comes to AR-15s. As I said before, I think the most critical things that you're going to want to look for in terms of having a good quality rifle that's going to last you a long, long time is the quality in the bolt carrier group and the quality in the barrel. Everything else, one, everybody's pretty much standardized everything else, and two, they're marketing a lot of different coatings and finishes and gadgets and gizmos that you can put on these. That's part of what makes it so much fun. And if you've got the money and there's something that you want, spend the money on it. I spend money on triggers. I buy Timney triggers. I buy Geissele triggers. That's where I like to put my money. There are other people who say, you know what, you're crazy for spending that kind of money on a trigger. Okay, I can take that. I accept that. So spend what you want, buy what you want. If you want to buy a $2,500 Noveske or a Daniel Defense, you're going to get a high quality AR-15 that's going to last, your lifetime and your kid's lifetime. I don't blame you at all for spending that type of money. I spent a lot of money on this 300 AAC Blackout. On the other hand, to bash people for buying a $600 or $700 AR-15 to go out plink with on weekends, which, face it, that's what the majority of us do. I just don't think that merits. I don't think that makes sense at all. One, you're not inviting people into the shooting sports, and two, you know what? It's going to work just fine for them. It really is. So, enjoy your AR-15, whatever you can afford, buy it. If you want Mil-Spec, and have that type of confidence, again, as I said before, you know what? Get a Colt 6920. It's the closest thing you're going to get. It's going to last your lifetime, and again, you're going to be able to pass it along down to your kids. You can have the confidence of not having to do a ton of research to figure out, who's using what types of steels, all that sort of thing. Hey, Colt 6920 is the way to go. It's a good value. You'll get these for around $1,000. That's a great value for the type of rifle that you're getting. But you know what? Spend more, spend less. Just spend it. Go shoot. Have a great time. So thank you very much for checking out the video today. If you found it to be of value, would appreciate your liking it, sharing it, subscribing to my channel here. I've also got a Facebook page, www.facebook.com/cruciblearms.com. Come visit me there, leave some comments if you will. Until next time, this is Crucible Arms, thanking you very much for stopping by.